Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Making Patient Engagement Happen, PFMD, and Shaping the Patient Engagement Management Suite. My name is Elena Balestra, and I'm Membership and Capacity Building Manager at EPF. Before we dive into today's topic, I would like to share with you a few housekeeping rules to make this webinar a more enjoyable experience. You can see that you have a control panel at the right side of your screen. If you want to ask us a question or share a comment, you can type in the question box just below. We will take all the questions at the end of the webinar, but if you want, you can send them to us at any time during the presentations. Due to the large number of participants, all of you are in listen-only mode. If you want to minimize the control panel to have a full view on your screen, you can have a click on the orange arrow at the left side of your panel. I kindly remind you that this webinar is being recorded and the video will be available after the webinar. Now that we took care of the housekeeping rules, we can dive into today's topic.
Next slide, please, Chi.
Thank you. I would like to share with you today's agenda. The next slide. So we say the patient engagement and landscape contest, which we provided by Nicola Bedlington. And then we will focus on patient-focused medicine development on PFMD. Where do we come from and our methodology, which will be presented by Nicholas Broke, PFMD Program Director and Executive Director or the Synergist. And then we will show you the SYNaPsE, the Patient Engagement Management Suite, which will be presented by Chi Pakarinen, Project Manager at PFMD and the Synergist. And then afterwards, we will have time for questions and further discussions with you. As I briefly mentioned, we will have three fantastic speakers with us today. Nicola Bedlington, EPF Secretary General. Nicola leads the European Patients Forum, which is an umbrella organization that represents more than 70 patients organizations in Europe. And afterwards, we will have the pleasure of listening to Nicola Broke, PFMD Program Director and Executive Director of the Synergist. The Synergist is an incubator that brings key players together in public-private partnership with the express aim of solving significant societal problems through collective action. And last but not least, we will hear from Chi Pakarinen, Project Manager at PFMD and the Synergist, who is working together with the team to bring relevant stakeholders around the table to drive patient engagement forward. Thank you very much to all the speakers for sharing their knowledge with us today. And Nicola, and of course, yeah, of course, that's me, sorry, Elena Balestra, and I will be moderating the discussion and the Q&A session at the end. Thank you very much to all the speakers for being with us today. And Nicola, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elena, for that kind introduction. It's a real pleasure to join you today to talk a little bit about the patient engagement landscape and the rationale behind EPF actually joining PFMD back in the day as a founding member. I think we all know that there's now much energy, much recognition, much commitment to patient engagement, and this has emerged over the last few years. But we're also very clear that it's still somewhat piecemeal, ad hoc. There's some real pearls of good practice, but there's an absence of a really structured, systematic approach to patient engagement that can be done confidently in a co-creational setting in an ethical and transparent way. And that, in a sense, was all of our thinking and one of the reasons and rationale behind the setting up of PFMD. Next slide, please, Chi. This came together very well in an article that was produced in a DIA journal just in advance of the formal establishment of PFMD as a network, and you'll recognise many of these co-authors as key key leaders in the patient engagement space. The article articulated very well a call for action for really partnering genuinely with patients in the development and life cycle of medicines, and essentially was the backdrop for the establishment of PFMD, the Patient Focused Medicines Development Initiative. Next slide, please. As I said earlier, EPF was one of the founding members of PFMD, together with our, let's say, sister organization in the US, the National Health Council, and a number of leading companies with a strong track record in patient engagement, and with the sense that they could go a little bit further within their own companies, but within the wider patient engagement environment. And since over the last 3 years, clearly the membership of PFMD has expanded quite considerably. And on this slide, you can see a number of logos that demonstrate the diversity of that membership. We have the Parkinson's Foundation from the US, for example. We have HTA International, which is a multi-stakeholder initiative looking at HTA and with a very specific component on patient involvement in HTA. We have the National Health Service in the UK that has done some amazing work, not only on patient engagement, but also on citizens engagement. So extremely diverse as a group, and really coming together at global level to unravel some of the conundrums that we need to move forward on to make sure that patient engagement isn't just the black of today, but is really something that is embedded in the way that we work and is a strategic imperative for medicines development, the life course approach to medicines. Next slide, please. We want to try and ensure that we have convergence. It's a very exciting, very dynamic ecosystem, and PFMD is central to that. And what we all need to do, EPF, UPATI, Paradigm, FPIA, WeCan, all of the players involved in patient engagement, we have a duty and a responsibility to work collaboratively together and not duplicate, but actually create synergies and a symbiotic effect of all of our efforts and all of our work. And here this slide demonstrates some of the different components of patient engagement and how they are very much interlinking. Looking at the evidence and methodology behind patient engagement, trying to provide a clear framework that is co-created, that the whole life cycle of medicine stakeholders can buy into, looking at the kind of tools, resources, supports that are needed for people who are really committed but need some help on getting it right. And this is very much what Paradigm as an IMI project is doing, and PFMD is really working in complete sync in this respect. Another important piece of PFMD's work that we'll hear about a little later on is the whole area of reasonable contract agreements, to make sure that those contracts are proportionate, are appropriate, are fit for purpose, so that there aren't any hurdles, unintended hurdles, in making sure that patients and patient organisations can really engage. Fair market value is another really important piece, and this is something that a lot of us are thinking about right now, to make sure that patients are fairly compensated for their not only their time, but their efforts, their experience, their unique expertise. And this is very much on the agenda. And I think that the work that PFMD and others are doing is really moving the needle on this. And then, of course, another last but definitely not least component is patient training, driven through the European Patient Academy and Therapeutic Innovation, and acknowledging, in fact, that patient engagement will not happen without effective patient training, making sure that patients have that baseline knowledge to be able to contribute their unique expertise and know-how to the medicines development process. So I hope this has given you a little bit of an overview of where we are. As I mentioned, it's a very dynamic, very exciting area with a lot of very creative thinking, a huge amount of commitment, and PFMD is a really exciting platform to actually develop this work and make sure that patient engagement really does become systematic, structured, and as effective as possible to ensure at the end of the day we get medicines that are of maximum benefit for patients and bring the outcomes that they need and deserve. I'll stop now and pass the floor to my colleague Nicolas to delve into a bit more depth about PFMD, the strategy, and some of the concrete tools that are being developed in this context. Nicolas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for the background information about PFMD. It's actually very exciting for us to be sharing what we have co-created so far with you and to actually extend the co-creation with you in the call. So I will spend a little bit of time explaining how we structured our work to get where we are today, so you understand how we have built the tools and the strategy so far. And then we will go more into the concrete tools that she will present to you. So I'm starting with the chart that you have on the screen right now that shows a little bit what was our focus from the start 3 years ago, where we had to start to build a collective platform with its governance and the capacity to deliver on a global scale with different needs in different places of the globe. But very quickly, we start to focus on what could be this methodology or framework for patient engagement that we have to deliver. And so we have been building tools, methodologies, and tools to actually make patient engagement and other tools to support patient engagement to happen. And then we quickly realized that it was one thing to create this framework and these methodologies, but we also have to make sure that the demand is out there across the organization and not only the innovator or early adopters. But so it's really important to make sure that the demand is there to make it happen and that the conditions for these people then to take it on board and to make it happen are there too. And so we added the blue layer that you have on the screen right now to make sure that what we are delivering together is actually used and usable with the drug development environment. So we split our work in 4 phases. The first one on the left is, it was very important to acknowledge that patient engagement is not systematic, but there are plenty of bubble of excellences within a given region, within a given department, in an industry, in a pharma company, within a specific disease or therapeutic area. So all of that had to be captured and aligned to make sure we are not duplicating or reinventing the wheel. And so we went through literature review, analyzing more than 20 existing frameworks focusing on one specific aspect or disease, and actually interview stakeholders. She will cover a bit the result of that, but interview the stakeholders to understand what were the expectations in terms of patient engagement, but also what were the expectations in terms of the other stakeholders. So what you, patient, would expect from industry, from regulators, and from HTA, and the same question asked to the other stakeholders. And doing so, we were trying to do some desk research where we were trying to find information, but we understood that we had to move. We were in a co-creating model, and we were finding the information very difficult to analyze because very similar and not differentiating. So we reversed the model. Instead of doing desk research, we invited everybody to phone interview first and then to online participation to actually come and input the work done on patient engagement. And that has become SYNaPsE, that we will cover in more details after, an online tool capturing people, organization, initiatives, and resources linked to patient engagement. And so that's what we will show in more details a bit later. But that's only the first phase, making sure that we have the bigger picture, but also the best possible comprehension of what's happening where and by who. And with that, we actually organized working groups with representative teams addressing different aspects of drug development and patient engagement in drug development. And so we started to co-create the agenda. So not directly the solution, but first, what do we have to work on? How can we build a systematic approach to patient engagement? And so that became the agenda that has delivered the tool that we will show to you today. And actually we are still in piloting and development phase. So we don't have an approach where we deliver a finished product. We have an approach where we put a product out and we test it with the audience. And so we have plenty of participative models. So first you can join the working groups. It was way beyond membership that contributors went to come and co-create with us. But then when we were ready with that first layer of co-creation, we submit an open consultation online in a very open way for any feedback that stakeholders or patients or anybody could have on the material we were doing. And finally, we publish all of that in a very open way. There is nothing in PFMD which is not made open to anybody. So that's not a closed environment. We are shaping it in an open way with the one that want to participate. And once we are ready, we publish it openly. Publications, online tools, we can really find everything we have done so far with no restriction of access. So as a result, we now are building what we call the patient engagement management suite. And so you will see later on what are the different products that feed it. But basically the idea is that we want to make sure that anybody active on that field can be on the map, so it can be actually found by the other players out there. And so we are, for example, through SYNaPsE, you can search people that have an expertise in a given region for a specific disease, for a specific phase of drug development. If we have that person in the database, more than 1,000 people, then you can filter the result and find that person. You can also, because it's one thing to find people that have a given experience, but you want people to explain what is the experience. And so they can showcase what they have done, for which initiative, with which expertise. And actually, it's a little bit like on LinkedIn. Actually, you can claim things on your profile, but based on what you put the link to the organization, the job title you put there, we can start to assess how truly expert you are or what true expertise you have. And so it's actually, you can feed your profile as an organization or as a person to make the true representation of who you are. And then we also have the resources that some of them have been built within PFMD, but we are also open in the sense that we link to any possible resources. So you might be familiar, I guess you're familiar with Eupathy. We have linked the Eupathy resource, to just take an example. We have linked the NAC resource, one of our members in the US. They have training material, they have plenty of other material. Anything which is patient engagement related is linked from the tool. And then finally, the last one is to make sure that you can also manage your relationships and projects, ongoing projects with the other stakeholders. So you have we are working with one pharma company in the development of one of their drugs. You can actually see who you are in touch with, who is a contact person, and actually you can share that with the rest of the organization. So you can have a kind of management of who is the contact person for what, who is the funding person, who is the medical person, who is the, and you can see that in pharma it's sometimes difficult to know who you should talk to. And on the other side, the pharma companies, for example, will tell you who is the contact person for what topic. And so it's a kind of CRM tool for patient engagement, and that's available. It's something that we keep developing. The tool was initially just a mapping tool, and you can see that we have now a lot of functionalities that we are adding to it. And actually, every month we have a new iteration where we add new features that are coming from the user. The ideas are coming from the user of the system. So you participate, and you can clearly submit ideas or suggest something, a need that you have and we have not met yet. So we can actually develop it, we add it to the pipe. So it's really a tool for the community, by the community. And we are just the engine delivering behind the scene. So that's the general approach. And then we have four tools that are more specific to PFMD. So the PE quality guidance. So we had to start to identify, it's one thing to identify how to do patient engagement, like, for example, a specific activity like designing the protocol of a new clinical trial, but we wanted to establish the rules that you have to respect for any activity with patients and all the stakeholders. And so we reviewed 20 frameworks, literature, and we really did a diligent work in terms of understanding what's out there. And we boiled it down to 7 dimensions. And here you can see the wheel, the colored wheel on the left. The 7 dimensions are very high level as such, but actually when you go in each of them, we have been very specific in how you can validate, one, that you are doing it, and 2, that all the people around the table, so HTA, industry, patients, all the people that work are actually on board with the level of representativeness, with the level of shared purpose, with the level of communication. So that's actually a tool that you can use to design and shape an activity that doesn't exist yet, or to actually assess an activity that's already ongoing. Then out of that, we have captured, through SYNaPsE and our phone interview, we have captured like 270 initiatives so far. And so we actually matched them against the quality guidance. And so we could identify good practices that we put in the book that illustrate at least 1 or 2 of the dimensions of the quality guidance, and that can inspire you if you want to actually have a better concrete idea of how to apply the guidance in terms of communication in a given context. And so you have examples, good practices that are in the book and that we keep completing as we continue to develop the platform. Then we have SYNaPsE, which is actually the software allowing a lot of this behind the scene. And finally, we are building future tools. So we have a list, for example, of do's and don'ts. We will be launching it today or tomorrow, which is actually a list of small things. So it's tips. When we were doing the high-level work, we were also capturing all the tips of do's and don'ts when you work with industry, when you work with patients, when you work with HTAs. There are plenty of little things that you should think about, and that if you start from scratch, you don't really necessarily map it. Now, in terms of how we build it, we have on this slide actually the vision on where we are today and where we want to go. So you read it from bottom to top. And so at the bottom, you have the analysis that I was explaining. So we were reviewing literature and the existing frameworks. We have mapped at the time 120 initiatives. We have done a survey to stakeholders to understand the expectation. On the right, you have the 2 blue boxes where you can see that we have done working group and an open consultation, and that led to the patient engagement quality guidance in gray, and part of that, the book of good practices and the do's and don'ts. And that's what we call the foundation. That's what you should be taking into account whatever you are doing, working in a drug development process, including patients. Now, the 2 blue boxes on the left, the 150 activities and the working groups, is something which is ongoing now. So when we were doing all the work that I just described, we also listed any potential activity patient could do in the process of drug development. And so we have listed all of them. And actually, we did a survey to ask the experts in a given phase of drug development, okay, what is the most relevant to you and what is the priority for you? So we can then define what are the how-to manuals, trainings, or whatever format we decide to do, we should start with. And so, for example, if you're in clinical research in orange, we want to make sure that we build a how-to manual which is completely coherent with the quality guidance, but add a layer of training on how you could design a clinical trial protocol, for example, with patients. And so the how-to, that the piece of the puzzles that are in white now, is actually the next step that we want to do, not necessarily on our own as PFMD. We are working closely with Paradigm, and I'm pretty sure that they will actually deliver some of the modules. And there are other partners in the US that are thinking to do the same too. And you see, you have some modules in white that are actually specific to a phase, but you also have other modules that could be, for example, an advisory board that are actually not specific to a phase of drug development. And so you have the white pieces like that are transversal to the entire process. And that's basically where we are and where we go. So we are now going more granular in terms of how to develop modules and to be very specific to give training to all the people involved. And so that's the bigger picture, and I will let you now explain a bit more concretely the specific projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So we'll take a few minutes to dive a little bit deeper into a few of the tools that are today available to you and how to use it. Firstly, the PE quality guidance and the book of good practices that Nicola already mentioned. So basically, we did not start from scratch. We did not reinvent the wheel. We did look at frameworks like Nicola mentioned, but we also involved them into creating something that was kind of a mashup of all the existing frameworks at the time, which was 2016-2017, that we did this literature analysis. And then we invited them into the working groups and workshops that we organized throughout the 1.5 years in Europe and in US. So the work includes not only their outcomes, but also they themselves participated in co-creation, in iteration by iteration testing and giving feedback and reviewing. The very first step in the whole process was doing our background, and the stakeholder expectation survey that Nicola mentioned is available for you through the links we provide here, and the slide deck will be shared, so you can find the poster that was presented at ISPOR, but also the publication that revealed all the outcomes and the whole process that we did. Just a quick overview of the results. You can find more details in the poster and in the publication, but the general opinion was that their patient engagement is very important, and it needs to be done, and there is an urgency to really collaborate to make it happen across the whole health systems and the PE landscape, but there weren't any clear opinion on who should take the lead, should there be regulations, and so on. It's very interesting read. If you have time, please take a look into that. Basically, from knowing where we were, how the landscape looked like, we were able to go into the development work of the PE quality guidance. I'm going to jump quickly through that slide and show you the 7 quality criteria that we ended up with. This work is basically taking the existing recommendations from those frameworks and the background work that we did, taking it, listing it, and then co-creating with in the different workshops to see, do we have enough? Is this representative enough? If we follow all these recommendations, do we have a good patient engagement practice? Or how should we do it? Do we find any gaps? So through iteration per iteration, we were able to narrow down and compile this 7 quality criteria that really represent patient engagement at a good quality. And this is a starting work now. We released the guidance in May into a piloting period. So right now we say, this is the work that we've done. We want you to take it, use it, send us feedback, see how it works for you, no matter which phase you are, if you're doing research, if you are in the clinical trials, if you're doing something with patients, please use the guidance and let us know. To support the usage of the guidance, we have also created the Book of Good Practice that was also mentioned. This went through rigorous testing as well. We used the quality criteria and the guidance as we were co-creating it. We were testing the cases in the workshops. We were interviewing people, getting more feedback. And in the end, from the list of over 100 cases that we saw and reviewed, it got shortlisted to 30, which then got shortlisted to 20, and we organized a expert panel group that we called called the core team, who then reviewed anonymized cases based on the quality criteria to really kind of see which of these examples actually exemplify each of the quality criteria. And then we took that information and released it to you. So you can find everything in one file, or you can find each separately on SYNaPsE, the online platform that we'll go into in a little bit. But before that, another very important project that will really give tools for the whole patient community to use, which is the legal guidebook, the collaboration that we have with WeCan.
And so I'll make a quick comment about that. So we were hearing, it's not necessarily linked to the framework for patient engagement, but we were hearing everywhere in conferences, in interaction with patient organization, that the burden of the legal aspect of collaborating with pharma was actually a huge blocking factor and a killer, not just a blocking factor, it was a killer. And so basically, we have partnered with the WeCan network, who had done research at the time, really identifying where were exactly the pain point, which legal aspect, what aspect in the legal negotiation. And so actually, we have a partnership there where we work with, I think if I remember well, 14 pharma companies too, part of the project, to actually summarize or to deliver contract templates that are short and in lay language. And so we aim for a couple of pages per contract. We have 4 contract templates in the pipe: the speaking agreement, the collaboration agreement, the consultancy agreement, and the advisory board. And so basically, we are at the stage now where we have agreed guiding principle for any contract that should be written between pharma and patient organization. And that goes already in quite a lot of detail. So I've seen the last version today, and we will publish it in the coming days. So it's really good material already today to help you interact with a legal department in industry, because you have now something very simplified, dealing with some specific laws like IP, which is very often an issue, for example, compensation, or so all these type of clauses. Actually, you have some guiding principle that says also why you should not address others. So that's a project which is about to be delivered. At least the guiding principle are close to be shared, and the 4 templates will come very soon.
So basically, the legal and compliance barriers started also at PFMD. After we realized that WeCan was also doing this project, we collaborated with them. So we've included a few slides in here to give you an overall idea of what it is, the objectives, the goal, and the product that will be produced and released in the coming days. Now, more into details, and I'll only spend a few minutes to show you SYNaPsE online. It started out as a mapping tool for us to collect or see the landscape of patient engagement, what is out there. But very quickly we realized that there is a need for a tool, and we also got comments saying, oh, can you do this and this with SYNaPsE? What if we could see also the people behind the initiatives, the organizations? And little by little it grew from the requests. So now SYNaPsE today, you will be able to put your organization and your initiatives out there. The system will map it in a map, yes, to show where you are, and also to give aggregate reports on existing initiatives that have been uploaded on the tool, give you a really good overview of what's happening. You can share projects, you can share reports, you can share resources that you created, whether it's a publication, whether it's a video, really create a culture change as well. There are tools for that. Very briefly, it can be divided into 2 kind of interfaces. There is the public interface, and then there is the private one, where you can manage all your patient engagement practices, the projects. You can share them within your team only if that's necessary, or you can actually put everything published and share with the community. The idea behind the tool is the more we share, the less we will duplicate, and the more everyone will benefit and get to the same level quicker. So that's one way of driving the patient engagement forward. So I want to now jump out of this presentation and show you SYNaPsE actually, and we'll only have a few minutes here, but it'll give you an idea and hopefully encourage you to go online to test it out as well. We'll be here to support you at your exploration for SYNaPsE. So this is what you will see online today. And you will also be able to take a quick look at initiatives that are there with a search, or just by scrolling down and seeing what there are. You can use the filters to search, but most importantly, everything that is listed in SYNaPsE today, you can find aggregate reports of. There is listing based on their geographic location, also based on the medical scope that they focus on. The patient matrix is very interesting. You can see the level of engagement in those projects for the type of patients that were involved in specific initiatives. So it's a very, very powerful tool for you, whether you wanted to just get an overview of what's happening out there, but also for you to manage your activities internally. So I'll show you quickly the private part of it, which is your organization's dashboard, before we'll go into EPF's profile as well. So internally, you will see and be able to manage everything that is publicly available in your organizations. You are able to manage organization users. Everything that you show publicly, you'll be able to activate internally as well. One of the newest features that we just launched in June is the partnerships map that is only internally for you to see. Here you can list and keep track of all your partnerships, all your collaborations, the contact details, and also the projects that you have in collaboration with them. Every partner, every member of PFMD, you will be able to find in SYNaPsE as well. And as you can see, for EPF, we also show the batches that their roles actively in PFMD. So here you'll see that they are a member organization, but they are also part of Paradigm. So the batches are one quick way to filter out projects, collaborations that you want to see. For EPF, for example, and with all the other organizations as well, you'll be able to see the initiatives that they have online and published, the people behind the organization, but also the resources that they share. And as you can see, it's very full information and it's updated by the organization themselves. So you'll be able to actually, if you needed to contact people, see what they've published and learn from their experiences as well. So that is a SYNaPsE in very, very quick terms. We wanted to make this webinar slightly more interactive as well. So we have a small task for you. We want you to participate in co-creation right now. And because, as mentioned before, PFMD co-creates and develops all the tools with the community. What you can see on the screen right now is actually the activity or the features in SYNaPsE that are in the pipeline in thinking. Now we are going to activate a flash poll for you, but before we go into that, I want to just spend a quick minute to explain what these are. So these are all basically coming from the needs from our members, from the network, from the community, the collaborations. The first one is disease pages. It's basically, this is a working name. It's basically a way to show a content that is related to a specific condition or therapeutic area in one place. You would get structured results from, for example, if you searched for breast cancer, you will get everything related to it in terms of publication, in terms of clinical trials, and experts, organizations, and so on. So this is one of the proposed next development milestones. The next one is patient engagement activity evaluation, where you can actually evaluate the level or the quality of patient engagement in your projects with the partners. So let's say that you had a project with 3 different stakeholders, pharma industry, with regulators, but you really want to see what they felt as the level of collaboration. So instead of going the ordinary way of sending them surveys, we do it in the tool and aggregate the evaluation score for you so that you can see it, you can share it with your partners, and you can share it with the public as well. So that's B. The third option, C, is very much related to A, but it can be a separate component of its own, where we show the clinical trial information that is pulled from different public data like clinicaltrials.gov, but everything would be in one place with easy to manage filters to show you ongoing completed trials once in the planning based on their location and so on. Option D is an event calendar functionality for your organization on SYNaPsE. You can showcase and highlight your activities and actually publish and advertise them in SYNaPsE for other organizations to see. The fifth one, which is E, is fair market value calculator. One of the projects that both Nicolas were mentioning, it's upcoming. It is something that has been requested, and here it is one of the options to be prioritized. So I'm going to ask our moderator, Elena, to take on the technicality aspect of the next activity. So you should be seeing then on your screen a quick poll. And Elena, I'll give you the floor now to explain.
Yes, you should be able to see people are already voting.
Oh, great.
You will have about 30-40 seconds to vote. All right, time is up. Now we share the results. Voila, I hope you can all see the results on the screen. And I think with 53% of people would like to see a disease pages. Then we have followed by both equal clinical trial information researchable from SYNaPsE, and again, as well as with 16% fair market value calculator, followed by with 11% PE activity evaluation system with partners, and with only 5% event calendar.
That's great. Thank you so much for giving us your opinion and insight. We'll definitely take this into consideration in our planning. So this actually concludes our presentation. Thank you so much. I'm going to give the floor back to Elena.
Thank you, Chia. Thank you for your presentation. I kindly remind you that you can write your question in the question panel on the right bottom of your screen. We already have a question from Amber that thanks you all speakers for the presentation, and she would like to start a profile for her organization, but she would like also to prioritize, if I understand correctly, and she would like to know what are the practices you would suggest to start with.
So the practices to start with, was that the question, Elena?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, when setting up a profile.
Okay, so it's very easy. When you go to SYNaPsE website, on the top right-hand corner, you will see two buttons, register and login. So when you click register, it is as easy as filling in your first name, last name, and password. After the verification email, the system will lead you forward in creating your organization, creating your first initiatives, and filling in profiles and starting to use the tool. If you experience any difficulties, we are only one email away. So pfmd@thesynergist.org, or you can contact us through the website as well. I hope this answered the question.
Yes. And we have Andrew that has a similar question from Parkinson UK, and he would like a confirmation of the SYNaPsE URL website, because apparently he had some issues in finding it back.
Okay, the short URL for it would be penetwork.org. So that we can insert that in the slide deck as well. A very short way to access SYNaPsE is penetwork.org.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And then I see another question from Matt. It's stating that it's very important to have patient representative involved in healthcare. Is PFMD aiming to work on this in the close future?
So I think this is part from the work stream that was in blue in the chart of the 3 dimensions, which is actually creating the demand and building the conditions for patient engagement to happen. Indeed, we are building some tools, but we need to make sure that all stakeholders embrace patient engagement. And so there's a lot happening right now. Nicola mentioned that, but one of the big disruptor right now will be PFDD, with the FDA work in the US to actually regulate how to engage with patients. And I think at least we are allowed to believe that it will have a huge impact to accelerate the movement. Still, the how to and to make it happen, there will be a lot of work. But clearly, PFMD is really involved and committed there, not only to produce some tools, but to make sure that these tools are actually usable and used by all stakeholders.
Thank you very much, Nicola. And we have another person from Italy, Clara, that is asking, she's saying that she would need more training, and she's wondering where she could find a bit more training and information about this.
If you mean training for SYNaPsE, we are here, the team is here ready, and we also give demos over the phone. That's usually the main way we can help everyone get started. There is also a help center online. If you scroll down to the footer, you will see the links to the help center. We have a few how-to videos there that will help you get started. But if there is a need for more structured training, let's say you wanted to train your colleagues or your department or organization to use SYNaPsE, that is also doable. Please contact the team online, and we can think of ways how we can support you in starting to use SYNaPsE. On the other hand, if you mean training for starting to use, let's say, the PE quality guidance, that is also available. We are here and we are helping you to get started with it, but also we have a big group of collaborators that help build PE quality guidance, they can also give their examples on how they have used it. And in the future, when we kickstart the future co-creation work, we would be glad to include more people that would also serve as training, because we would go through how was this tool created, how it's supposed to be used, but also you would be able to join the co-creation work as well for future iterations.
And really don't hesitate to contact us. We are really looking to actually get a direct sense of what's your experience, so we can actually improve the way the whole tool is working. So really, don't be afraid to ask for support, because that's where we can understand how we can improve the tool. So that's really important that we have this dialogue going on.
And if you're talking about training and education in medicines development more generally, then EUPATI is probably your port of call. And I would suggest you go onto the EUPATI website and you'd be able to find out a little bit more about the work of the Italian national platform. The toolbox is available in Italian, and yeah, take it from there. And again, if there's any queries or questions, don't hesitate to come back to the EUPATI team.
Indeed, thank you, Nicola. We have another question right by an anonymous. How do patient engagement experts get developed? It's such a new developing area. How can we ramp up skills and knowledge quickly if it's our interest but not our expertise? Sorry, our experience. So basically, I think it's they want to know how they can really develop much more quickly their knowledge in this area, although they are not very expert on this.
I think it's directly linked to the comment Nicola just made. So in SYNaPsE we have the network, but if you talk about the skills to engage and the expertise needed to engage, then it's really, I think EUPATI is really the best source. You can access it directly on the EUPATI website or from SYNaPsE, but you have some training modules and some more advanced program you can follow from there. But EUPATI is probably the answer to that question.
Yes, indeed. They're very similar questions. I'm not gonna get into those. All right, our time for question really came to an end. Of course, we will be able to answer to the question that we couldn't deal with during the webinar afterwards via email, and we will also send you a follow-up email with all the links of the programs and projects we've been talking during the webinar for you to access with more time to all these resources. I thank you all very much, and particularly the speakers, for sharing their knowledge, and to you, our audience, to follow us today. And I kindly remind you that this webinar has been recorded and it will shortly be available on EPF YouTube channel. But if you're not following yet, you can subscribe and be sure to receive updates on our latest videos and webinars, as well as will be posted on the PFMD YouTube channel. I thank you all very much for your attention, and I wish you all a good day.